The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
We're also going to be debating later this comment about Obama: if Catholics have their school buildings and Protestants have theirs, that encourages division.
Because issues like segregated schools and housing, lack of jobs and opportunity, symbols of history that are a source of pride for some and pain for others, these are not tangential to peace, they are essential to it. If towns remain divided, if Catholics have their schools and buildings and Protestants have theirs, if we can't see ourselves in one another, if fear or resentment are allowed to harden, that encourages division. It discourages cooperation.
Does he have any clue what Catholic schools teach? Does he have any clue? I went to Catholic schools for 12 years, and you're taught to be a Christian, to love your neighbor as yourself, to love one another as yourself. I mean, is that really his model? I mean, then I guess when Nicholas Kristof, and we'll get into this later, we'll debate it in our final hour today, Nicholas Kristof wrote about Obama, man of the world. He said, this is what he wrote. He wrote, when I was a little Jakarta street kid, he said, when he grew up in Indonesia, if you remember. I didn't say born in Indonesia, grew up there. He said in a wide-ranging interview in his office, excerpts on my blog, this was in March of 2007, he once got in trouble for making faces during Quran study classes in his elementary school, but a president's less likely to stereotype Muslims as fanatics and more likely to be aware of their nationalism if he once studied the Quran with them. Obama recalled the opening lines of the Arabic call to prayer, reciting them with a first-rate accent. And a remark seemed delightfully uncalculated. It'll give Alabama voters heart attacks, and I guess they're part of the group that clings bitterly to their guns and Bibles and religion. Mr. Obama described the call to Islamic prayer as, quote, one of the prettiest sounds on earth at sunset. Well, he went to a Muslim school in Jakarta. It's right there in the New York Times. Some people doubt me when I quote these things. Anyway, so is that divisive? Does that encourage division? He went to an all-Muslim school. A lot of Muslim countries, they don't really, well, for example, if you're Jewish, good luck getting into a Muslim country. Good luck. People that are Jewish can't go to Saudi Arabia. Let me remind you, there was a tennis player from Israel, wasn't allowed to play a big tournament. Forget where the tournament was, Dubai or Qatar or one of those countries. I don't remember which one. Just outrageous. Look at the Coptic Christians and the way they're being treated right now. All right, we'll get into more of this later. Back to immigration for a second, then we'll hit the phones. You know, no wonder we're in $17 trillion in debt. You know, thanks to an executive order I bet you've not heard of by Obama, illegal aliens in at least one state are now entitled to go to medical school for free, and the taxpayers get stuck with the tab. Pajama Media. Recent article, Crane's Chicago Business, had the headline, Loyola Med School to admit undocumented students. Wait a minute, that's a Catholic school. That's a divisive school. It encourages division. Anyway, the university's School of Medicine not only intends to waive legal residency as an admissions requirement for applicants, but they aim to offer a financing plan through a state agency. Not only is Loyola admitting illegal aliens to its medical school, but they're also handing you, the Illinois taxpayer, the bill for their education. How did that happen? Well, Dean Linda Brubaker and Mark Kozinski, director of the school's Institute for Bioethics, decided to open the school to undocumented students after Obama signed an executive order in June of 2012 making it possible for young adults brought to the U.S. as children to temporarily live and work legally in the U.S. I mean, but Obama doesn't get through the legislative process. He just rams down our throat through executive orders. Now, why is that important? Well, there's a lot of kids in America that like to get into Loyola School of Medicine. That's all right. Don't worry. Well, if you're here illegally, didn't respect America's laws and sovereignty, we'll do that. The group FAIR actually came out with an interesting analysis of S-744, the bill. And it points out on the issues of the consequences of different crimes. For example, It would be a misdemeanor offense, including but not if you have a misdemeanor offense, including but not limited to driving under the influence or assault and battery and crimes of domestic violence. Well, you can have up to 1 year in jail for each offense if you are a U.S. citizen and legal or illegal immigrant. If you're an illegal immigrant now, you're eligible for the crime to be waived. If you falsely represent or knowingly use a Social Security number obtained with false information, you're eligible for a waiver. But if you're a legal U.S. citizen, you're punishable by up to 5 years under 42 U.S. Code 408. If you falsely claim citizenship on Form, 19 or I-9, you're eligible if you're illegal for a waiver. But if you're a U.S. citizen, it's a felony punishable up to 3 years. If you knowingly alter a Social Security card, you're eligible for a waiver if you're here illegally. If you're a citizen, you're punishable up to 5 years. If you use document fraud to prove eligibility for employment, if you're illegal, you can get a waiver under this bill. If you're a U.S. citizen, felony punishable by up to 15 years imprisonment. If you fail to pay your taxes, file a return, keep required records, or supply required information. If you're illegal, you're eligible for a waiver. If you're a U.S. citizen, imprisonment up to 1 year or a fine of up to 25 grand or both. If you willfully attempt to evade or defeat any tax or the payment of tax, if you're illegal, you're eligible for a waiver. If you're a U.S. citizen, you get up to 5 years in jail and a fine of up to 100 grand or both. Get the point? I can keep going. I see that Hagel has now stepped into Joe Biden territory as the most embarrassing member of the Obama administration. Do we have this tape? It was on BuzzFeed. He's asked a question at the University of Nebraska, and then he says to the guy, he asks him whether he's a member of the Taliban. Listen to this.
Okay, so who has a way up in the back there? You're not a member of the Taliban, are you?
The guy was an Indian gentleman and a college professor. Wow. And he had previously answered a question on Afghanistan, negotiating with the Taliban, which is really stupid.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.